to the Theme Park Duo Podcast. Grab your seven-time monster friends and hop in line as we take you on a creepy tour of some of the best haunts around. Now, here are your scary hosts, Nikki and Gabriel.
And welcome back, everybody, to our second episode of this spooky Halloween special of the Theme Park Duo Podcast. And I'm one of your hosts, Gabriel.
I'm your other host, Nikki.
And this episode holds a special place in my heart, Nikki. It really, truly does. It is my favorite thing in the world.
I think everyone can already guess.
Outside of you, I mean. Like, you're my favorite thing, and then this is like my favorite event.
That's fine.
You know, I have to kind of balance it a little bit. Little Nikki, a little Scary Farm. Oh, I blew it. We're talking about Scary Farm today. I'm really excited. And I'm even more excited because we have a guest on the show today to talk about Scary Farm with us. Somebody who's had a long history with Scary Farm. Somebody who's, you know, has a lot of personal history with Scary Farm, which is really cool. And he's written a freaking book on top of all of that, all about Scary Farm. And if you don't know who I'm talking about already, we're talking about Ted Dougherty. Welcome to the show, sir.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm very excited to join you today.
Yes, we are pumped to have you on the show because, like I said, you've had this long history with the farm and even have written this incredible book. It's a picture history, Not Scary Farm's Halloween Haunt, and it's forwarded by Neil Patrick Harris, which is very cool. So you have a lot of history with it. How did you get started with going to Scary Farm? When was like your first experience? And is that how you fell in love with it?
Yeah, so I don't remember when I first heard about Not Scary Farm, but I definitely had heard of it. But I remember the first time I actually went, there were some friends in high school basically that brought it up, and I'm like, you know what, I've heard of this, let's check it out. So the first year I went was in 1987, way back when, and literally have gone every single year since. I immediately fell in love with it. Actually, I was really terrified at first because I was pretty young, and it really freaked me out. I remember running into the stores to get away from the sliding monsters. And it was just like totally freaked me out. We went on the log ride, which was themed, I think it was called the Sorcerer's Realm at that time. So
That's pretty cool.
It was like this sort of medieval mystic kind of precursor to Harry Potter type of experience. And then we also went through The Enemy Within, which was in the haunted shack. And we didn't really know what we were doing, and so we didn't go through very many mazes or anything. We tried to get in line to see Weird Al Yankovic because he was headlining the event that year.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
I know. And but I had enough of a taste of it where I knew, I'm like, oh, this is so cool. So the following year, went back and continued going back as a fan for many, many years. And then in the late 1990s, one of my friends who I had been going to Not Scary Farm with all those years, he ended up becoming a professional web designer back at that time. And so there was nothing, you know, very much on the internet about Halloween Haunt at that time. So I had taken a bunch of pictures and collected the maps and souvenirs over the years, and I told my friend Mark, hey, you know what, we should create a website about Not Scary Farm, like a fan website. And we did, and it is named ultimatehaunt.com, and that was published in April of 2000, and miraculously enough, it's still around. Even though it's not as updated as it once was, it still exists. Anyways, through that, kind of took the fan thing to a newer level with the internet kind of booming at that time, and got to connect with, you know, Not Scary Farm fans throughout the world and all that stuff. So it was really cool. And so I'd always wanted to work Not Scary Farm, but didn't have the guts to go through these crazy auditions that would be publicized in the newspapers. So I always avoided working it. But once I had the website and started connecting with like employees and former employees and current employees of Knott's Berry Farm, I found at that time they didn't really audition anymore. And so I basically got a job working as one of the talent and fell in love with that and did that for 10 seasons, working in the now defunct scare zone, The Swamp, which was over by Reflection Lake, which barely exists anymore, but it's over by the where the missions are now. And then I went over to Ghost Town. I also worked one season in the Silver Bullet mining town, its first year, but spent most of my time in Ghost Town as one of those sliding monsters, and loved every second of it. And after that, and I know this is kind of a long-winded backstory, sorry, but after that...
You're good, it's interesting. I love it.
Okay, cool. After that, basically, throughout the years of having that website and having worked the event and kind of seeing both sides of, being a fan and being an employee, I had accumulated a lot of information about the history of this event because, like I said before, there wasn't much out there on the internet or anywhere about what was going on before I started going. I always kind of wondered what Knott's Scary Farm was like in those early years. And so we sort of published information as we would gather it throughout the years on the website. But after a while, I just had so much information. I'm like, you know what? This needs to go somewhere else. I need to do something bigger with this. And there was a point in the late 2000s that it was like there were rumors that Cedar Fair might be selling Knott's Berry Farm.
Oh, geez.
And so that kind of freaked people out a little bit. And so I'm like, you know what? I got to do something with this while I can, because who knows what would happen if, another theme park company bought it, or like some, I don't know, condo development company bought it or whatever, you know what I mean? And so, so it became sort of this, a bigger drive to say, okay, listen, we really need to sort of document this information. So I went on this sort of fun adventure for a couple of years, doing massive amounts of research. I mean, spending, weekends like in, libraries throughout Southern California and going through hours and hours and hours of like microfilm and everything just to find newspaper articles, to find people's names that used to work at Knott's Scary Farm or Knott's Berry Farm. So I would track these people down just through like Google searches and stuff like that, and a lot of people were interested in talking, and so I think I did like over 80 interviews of former and current Knott's Berry Farm employees to put that book together.
That's absolutely bonkers.
Yeah. And so, I had the blessings of, the folks at Knott's Berry Farm to do it. So, they allowed me into their archives and provided me with a lot of sort of, missing information. The Orange County Archives, Chris Jepson over there is really fantastic and was a huge help. And then all of the other people, all the former monsters, the marketing people, merchandise people, artists, whoever I could find, had different contributions that they made to the information that I was gathering. And so, eventually I realized, this is not going to fit on my website. And so I'm like, so we did, decided to do it as a book, and that was released in connection to the 40th anniversary that took place. When was that? 2012 is when it was.
Yeah, so about 5 years ago.
Yeah. And so, so through that book, I think it did pretty well, and especially like in the theme park industry, because Knott's Scary Farm is something that a lot of theme park folks, employees are interested in, because most theme parks do some sort of Halloween event now, and so a lot of these people sort of began to track me down and say, "Listen, you can write and you worked the event, you know a lot about the event. Can you help us do stuff for us? And so for the last few years, that's what I've been doing, is helping other theme parks and other companies with their Halloween events and their seasonal events and sort of scare attractions. And that's been a lot of fun. So it's kind of an ongoing weird kind of crazy saga with my relationship with Knott's Berry Farm and Halloween events.
It's cool because it kind of hits so many different facets of the interaction with the event and how it means something to you. And it's interesting for me in particular because I was in high school when I fell in love with this thing at the same time. And funny enough, I happened to come across your website when I was, digging for as much information as possible for something. One, it's a little bit insane for me to be sitting here and talking to you because you were really the facilitator of me really becoming the addict that I am now. So thank you for that.
Okay.
But at the same time, it's so cool to know that now all this stuff is here and we are all in this community together loving this event. Back when I started to get kind of addicted to this, I never realized that there was a whole bunch of other people like me. I thought I was the only one.
Yeah.
I really did.
Yeah.
And now we are open and available to read incredible books like the thing you have or your website or every other website for that matter. So it's really cool to see all that happen like that. And Nikki, I know you're in a bit of a different situation because you got recently introduced to it.
Well, yeah, I'd say like the last 5 years or so, but I just think it's amazing to me that it's just such a community of really hardcore fans. Like, I think it's amazing that you've been going to Haunt or working Haunt or, somewhere in between for 30 years. That's so cool.
I know. That's crazy, huh?
Yeah.
When you say it out loud, it does sound crazy.
Oh, yeah. When he said 87, I was like, dang, 30 years. That's awesome.
I mean, I've only been going since, like 2004 or something like that?
Wow.
So pretty early on. But I mean, like, even then, like, there's a lot of people who have been going as long as, like, the thing has been going on.
Yeah.
Like the first day, my aunt went to the first year of Haunt, which is insane. I mean, she doesn't go every year, but she went to the first one, which is still crazy to me.
Yeah.
But
so cool.
I mean, this only shows like the tip of the iceberg with regards to what Scary Farm means to people and how big of a deal Knott's Scary Farm is. Because I know a lot of people who listen to this podcast live on the East Coast. They don't quite know what Knott's Berry Farm is. Half the time I'm like, oh, I was at Knott's Berry Farm this weekend. They're like, why would you want to pick berries for the weekend? I was like,
yeah,
it's a little different.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, I mean, at least Knott's now, I think, is gaining, decent momentum nationally and in other ways internationally. But yeah, when I first started doing all of this, when I would talk to people out of town or like go to haunting conventions outside of California, it was like, they'd be like, wait, isn't that the place that just makes the jams and jellies and stuff? And they didn't know that there was this massive Halloween event. And they didn't know that, their local theme park was influenced by what Knott's Scary Farm or Knott's Berry Farm was doing.
Yeah, and there probably wouldn't be a lot of the things that they have if it wasn't for Scary Farm.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, totally.
And now we have, like, kids all over the country working at Halloween events at theme parks, like, looking up videos of our sliders.
Yeah, our sliders, and even our sliders going to other states to go teach other sliders.
Yeah.
Yep. I love it.
So, I mean, it's just so cool to see it expanding, and I love to share Scary Farm with as many people as I can over the seasons, just to share with everybody how incredible this event is, because there is nothing like it. There's never going to be anything like Scary Farm anywhere else in the world, and I'm really happy that it's in our backyard. That we have
totally
something so
agree.
unique.
Totally agree.
So,
yes, I agree.
Every single year, even if there's things that are technically repeated, there's always differences, and there's always something that makes it extremely unique every single year. And I'm just in love with it in every way, shape, and form. I'm just giddy. I feel like a kid when I go. That's weird because a lot of kids don't think about like monsters and sliders and gore and blood and inappropriate jokes, but this kid does.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, no, I love the stuff.
So over the years, Knott's has really changed with regards to Scary Farm and the theme park as a whole, but it really has changed from what it was to what it is now. And what we're going to be talking today is about the 2017 event, what we experienced opening night. There was a couple things we didn't get to do, but we pretty much did every single thing they had to offer that opening night. And we're going to be going multiple nights over the season. But we're going to be going through the mazes. We're going to be talking about the scare zones, and we're going to be talking about the shows. So we're going to give you an overview of it and what we think and, value and stuff like that. So let's just jump right into this thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll start off with the scare zones. And let's start off with the scare zones. So once you enter the park, if you go to your right-hand side, there's this area called Camp Snoopy. Camp Snoopy during the day is very much just a kid's area. There's some kid rides. It's really cute. It's really fun. Lots of trees. At nighttime, for Scary Farm, they turn it into the Hollow, which is very much a Sleepy Hollow style vibe scare zone with scarecrows and birds and witches and things like that. And it was premiered last year, and everyone got really excited because we finally had a scare zone back in Camp Snoopy. That was a really big deal. We got it taken away because Infected was originally there. And I don't know about you two, but this year, its incarnation is leaps and bounds better than what it was last year, based on its music, its lighting package, and the music. Like, everything put together makes this a really strong scare zone for me.
Yeah, I totally agree. I absolutely agree.
I also agree. And Gabe, you told me that this year they actually have like show moments that we haven't caught yet. But
Yeah, they
I'm excited
do.
to see that.
Yeah, because they cut off that whole area where there's this waterfall and the bridge, the water bridge and stuff, and down there every now and again through the night they have these different story moments that revolve around the witches that are coming out in the scare zone, which is fun. And this is another thing that makes you Not Scared Farm unique, is that they throw this thing in there and they don't even tell anyone about it really. They're just like, oh yeah, that's going on.
Yeah.
It's like these small little nuggets of entertainment that you want to go find.
Yeah, I love it. I got to check out a couple of them. And so my thoughts regarding the Hollows was, first off, Camp Snoopy is very near and dear to my heart. So it's really awesome that there's a scare zone there, because it's really, the Gauntlet, when it started back in 1996, was the first sort of technical scare zone at Not Scary Farm. And so, because Ghost Town was already sort of inherited into the event. So all these years later, it's wonderful to see it become a really solid scare zone again. I think the idea was, the different characters throughout the Hollows is sort of, you've got these witch hunter characters and you've got the witch characters, and we happen to catch sort of these, what appear almost these impromptu sort of vignettes kind of situations where, the characters are talking. So we watched some of the witch hunter guys, talking about, be careful of the witches and warning us and kind of leading us to this story. And ultimately at midnight, there is sort of this peak of the show that does take place at those, at those waterfall sections in the middle of the scare zone. And I think it's a really neat way to take the scare zone to a newer level by providing some additional entertainment value that is not necessarily a scheduled show like on the map, because I think that would probably draw too much attention and make it so there would be too many guests gathered around and nobody would be able to hear any of the characters talking. So it's sort of this nice, lighter type of experience. And if the schedule allows, or if you're going to be going a lot throughout the season, you can really kind of follow and check out what the characters are doing throughout the night and periodically visit them. And then, like I said, the apex is at the end with sort of this bigger show. And so I think it's a really awesome way to enhance and create some additional depth to the characters in this scare zone. And then also I felt that, like you said, the music was a lot, it was definitely, I don't know if it was
Felt more
different.
present. It definitely felt more present.
Yeah.
Like it was almost like a character in and out of itself, because last year it was very low light, lots of fog, and the music kind of just felt like it was like a bed of music that would just happen to be there, like background music. This really felt like the music was really present within your experience when you walked through.
It did, yeah. It absolutely, and it did create some additional tension, and it was really cool. And the sets that they had are sort of the little tree figure things that they had and all that stuff created some really cool theming. I know that there's always been the challenge, especially lately, of keeping the theming fairly minimal so that way it doesn't impact the day operations too much. And so I thought what they did with the Hollow was really good, and it felt like a good, solid scare zone.
That's the way that I wanted it to be last year, and I liked the Hollow last year. I thought it was good, but they're just taking it to this next level and just introducing these new bits, like you said. And I 100% agree with you in every facet that this thing is becoming a full-fledged scare zone that people are going to want to come back for and not just want to hang out in Ghost Town. I think we have a little competition going on here, even though we have a little... Like, if you look at the map, like, Ghost Town is massive, and then you have the Hollow, which is like this itty-bitty corner. But, man, they have competition on their hands. Like, those actors are going for it, those monsters.
They are, and I think at the end of the day, too, is it helps Knott's Scary Farm become more complete. So doesn't matter if you decide to go left or right or straight when you enter the park. You are going into something that has a feeling of sort of an all-encompassing sort of horror experience, which I think is excellent.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And as you turn the corner, if you go through the hollows and make a left out of Camp Snoopy into Fiesta Village, what scare zone do we hit, Nikki?
You hit Fiesta de los Muertos.
Which is a
Day of the Dead.
Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos themed scare zone, which fits perfectly within Fiesta Village. And they don't really have to do too much with regards to like props and stuff, because the whole place is decorated like that. It's almost like Ghost Town in a way, where you don't really have to do too much.
Yeah.
They did mention that they were getting rid of the DJ this year. There was a huge DJ, and there was like almost this dance party there. And they said they're getting rid of that, and it's going to become a scare zone. A full-fledged scare zone with a lighting package and music and everything. I noticed the same music that they've had in the past. Didn't really notice lighting so much. And I felt like there was a little bit less monsters as well. I don't know if anybody else felt that way, but it didn't feel like a scare zone that they were describing it to be.
Well, my observation was, at least from when I went through a few times, I did see a decent handful of characters, and I thought they were really, really good. There was especially this one character, this like kind of female character that had this cool lantern. It was just so cool looking. So I thought there was decent coverage, but I think it's really well illuminated because there's so much going on right there. There's some games over there, sort of, by... I forgot what some of the rides that are right there. I think you have to have some lighting there, so it doesn't get very dim, sort of in and around where they had the DJ before. And so I'm wondering if they might be able to later in the run. It might be a little bit more dim, but I'm not too sure. For me, it did not feel much like a scare zone, as it just felt more like there's monsters in the area.
I agree with that.
That's kind of what my take was. But I think, just like with the Hollow, I think it's a process. I think they're building it. It's certainly better than it has been in the past, and I think they're just going to have to sort of work with the existing environments to see how much they can get away with as far as lighting, dealing with the games, that type of thing is a little tricky. Somewhat kind of like what Carnival suffers from, because they have so many games over there too.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, I don't know where you stand on this, Nikki.
I agree to a certain extent. Like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I kind of miss the party. Like,
I could understand that, because like the party gave it like this balance to the event, because it was a crowd sucker. Like, people would just go there to dance, and it'd take people out of lines for mazes. But at the same time, like, you have Elvira and the hanging, and then you have the 3 different things spread throughout the park that are different forms of entertainment.
Yeah, and I mean, like, half the time you would see the scare actors there, like, dancing around the edges of the party, or, it's like you were distracted by that, so you wouldn't see one coming up to you and you'd get scared. It was kind of like a distraction, too.
There was this energy.
Yeah, it was an energy.
In the zone.
Maybe that's what it's missing this year, that energy that it had before because of the party. I mean, there are some great actors in there. There's a few characters that, I can just recall that are super cool and they're really into their characters. So I appreciate the scare zone, but I do think that it can be improved next year.
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
And if I were to just touch on one last thing, because I do think it's something that's cool, and I think it's worth keeping. I just think, like you said, there's room for improvement. The one last thing that I would want to touch upon is I would love to see less of those plastic skull masks and more airbrush makeup and more prosthetics, because there was a few people who were wearing just airbrush makeup that looked terrifying, and there was some prosthetic makeup as well that was really well done. You can have a couple sporadic like plastic masks out there, but don't have the majority of your monsters be wearing those, because to me it just takes the value away from the scare zone when you know that you have these people who are capable of doing this incredible makeup work on your monsters, and that makes it a lot more interesting when you have the very different types of monsters.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't notice any of the plastic masks that you're talking about. So yeah, everybody that I saw, I think, were prosthetics or 2D makeup. So yeah, but I would agree if they're like just like kind of were they like the old school like plastic vacuum form?
It's like half skulls. Like their jaws are painted black, and then like
those guys. Okay, no, I see. No, I agree. I totally agree. That needs I agree. That could be improved upon.
I mean, other than that, like we said, I think this is a good scare zone, just needs to be improved upon in the later years. So.
Yes.
Once you go past that, and there's literally a border in between them of the train goes by there, not at night, but in general, that's just kind of like the border. Then you go into Carnival, which is the clown scare zone, which I tend to hear a lot of people talking about throughout the night. Like, I don't want to go to Carnival. I don't want to go to Carnival, because people have this really weird fear of these clowns that doesn't normally appear when they're just out somewhere else. When they come here, they find that to be the most terrifying thing. So I find that really funny. And for me this year, I think Carnival freaking rocked it.
I think it's really strong.
And every single time we go, it is high energy. And I think it helps that there's that huge construction happening. Because normally when you have that construction, it usually hinders a lot of people. But because it made the area smaller, it feels a lot more populated. And when you have those high energy actors going through there acting like crazy people, it works really well.
No, I totally agree with you. Every time I went through it, it was packed full of high energy talent that were doing a fantastic job. I think there's a really cool array of characters. They have now a queue that they can kind of work with, Dark Ride being sort of right in the middle of their scare zone, and even wrapping around past the construction and stuff more toward the fountain and everything. There were talent all the way over there working it and doing really good. I do have a question for you though.
Yes.
There was a stage that is over by whatever used to be the Buffalo Nickel Arcade, but now it's Johnny Rockets or whatever.
Johnny Rockets.
Yeah.
So were they doing a show there as well as what kind of similar to what the Hollow is doing?
No, I think it's purely props.
Yeah, really? I didn't notice anything.
It's all, if you recognize the stuff, it's stuff from that circus show that they had on during the summer.
Yeah, the elephant was definitely from that show.
Yeah, we've been twice and we have not seen any inkling of a show over there, like a show moment.
But if somebody's listening to this and they know that we're wrong, if there is something that's going there, email us, contact us. We're curious. We want to know.
Yeah.
Because we personally have not seen anything on those stages at all.
Yeah.
We walked through there, I think, 4 times the last visit, too, just because, one, I needed photos for the site of the clowns, but, we went through there because we were enjoying it because it was so good.
Yeah, I did not notice anything either other than that stage. So that kind of, I'm like, I was just a little curious about that. But otherwise, you're right. The talent were fantastic, extremely high energy, and, historically, Boardwalk always been a massive headache for Scare Zone operationally, right? Because it's so massive. It has to have the bright lights because of the shows or because of the games and the roller coasters and all that stuff. So for many, many years before you guys started going, they experimented with different themes inside the boardwalk during Knott's Scary Farm. They did like Mardi Gras. They did all kinds of different types of things.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they couldn't find like a really good groove that they felt was really cool. They did these sort of 1950s like weird undead like tourists and things like that. It was really kind of interesting, but none of it really caught on until they really decided to say, hey, you know what? The one character, the one type of monster that freaks people out and can still be well lit are clowns. And so once they locked in on that, they've gone through various incarnations of clowns, like kind of more like they almost had these like bruiser clowns in the years past, of different types of clowns before they sort of locked into what they're doing now. And now I feel that they've really found themselves, and I think that is somewhat reflected in the talent, because the talent is really feeding off of it, because they have a lot to work with now, because they have some solid characters that are being assigned to them that they can really sort of embrace. And that is, really kind of crucial in the success of any kind of a Scare Zone or even a maze. So I think these people are doing a really fantastic job in bringing it to life and really kind of pulling off this massive task of covering such a huge footprint of the park.
Yeah.
And they do such a good job.
Yeah.
They do a fantastic job. And to touch upon something that you said, we have all these different characters. And I feel like, in particular, within Carnival, those characters facilitate different types of scares more than any other Scare Zone, in my opinion, because you'll have one of them. We saw this clown who was like writhing on the floor, like taking gunk out of his mouth and grossing people out. Then you have a clown who's like messing with balloons and popping them in people's ears. Then you have another clown who's like disjointing his arm from his body and throwing it over his head.
Yeah.
You have another one has like an auga thing that he like runs up to people and scares them with that. You just
Don't
see
forget
such
the
a
clownfish.
And there's the clownfish, literal clownfish. You just see such a wonderful variety of scares in this Scare Zone, to me, more than a lot of the Scare Zones, which is really cool. And for me, particularly in the past years, I've been just very meh with Carnival.
I think about 2 years ago, you're like, that's it, it's dead, it needs to go, and I think it redeemed itself a lot.
It has come back from the dead for me this year. Like, they have proved me wrong, and I will be the first person to admit that.
Yeah, I think they've done, like I said, they did a fantastic job, and I think it's growing. You could almost sort of feel that they've got something that they're proud to be able to work with now. And so when you have this, situation where there's a lot of identity within the different characters, I mean, you just rattled off a few different memorable characters. We couldn't do that with any of the people, any of the characters in Fiesta de los Muertos, right? And so, and Hollow certainly has identifiable characters that are broken up. And so
there was a raven that kept saying people weren't worthy.
Yeah.
He kept calling at people. I definitely remember him. And then was a guy who kind of looked like Sam, like a little like odd version of Sam from Trick or Treat. But other than that, like,
but still, they're not their own characters. They're just they're memorable, but they're not like a clownfish.
They're not individual.
They're not as
identifiable.
Exactly. I think the closest thing you have to it in the Hollow is probably the witches. But beyond that, you're right. And so I think that is a huge plus. And don't forget, the reason we can possibly remember these characters a little bit better in Carnival is because it's so well illuminated. And so they're right there in the bright light. There's no fog. Those people are proud of it. The talent are proud that that's what they have to work with, wide open, right? So what options do they have? There's nowhere for them to sort of really hide or anything like that. They're fully exposed. And so what they do have is an opportunity to create character. And I think they're doing an excellent job in doing that.
They are.
Yeah, it's like, honestly, like outside of Ghost Town, it's the one scare zone that I'm like, I kind of want to watch over my shoulder because I do not want that balloon guy coming anywhere near me.
You got me last time.
Stay away from me with those balloons. I'm content. I can live my life well without having to hear that again. But I guarantee you I'm going to hear it like 15 more times throughout the year. So that's just the way it rolls. But moving forward to the granddaddy of them all, we have Ghost Town Streets, which is where everything was born, which is insanity. And I mean, what can we say about Ghost Town that hasn't already been said? I mean, it's intimidating beyond all belief. Somebody, even for me, who's been going for a while, and Ted, I can't speak for you, but like even me walking through Fog Alley, which is like the main portion of Ghost Town, I'm terrified. Like I'm really nervous and on edge because they're out there and you have no idea where they are.
Yep, Ghost Town is inherently scary, right? It's this creepy, the buildings being permanent. You have this inherent sort of creepiness to it without Knott's Scary Farm. But once you turn everything on and you have the creatures creeping through there and stuff like that, it it is the granddaddy of all scare zones. And when I go through Ghost Town, I always still to this day, even this past weekend when we went, it just, I go to Fog Alley because that's where I spent most of my time when I worked in Ghost Town, and duck into the shadows and just kind of soak it in. And I did that constantly, when I was working there, sort of taking these mental snapshots and really appreciated where I was working because, you think about back to 1973 and those stunt men and women that worked in the Wild West show that were put out dressed up as monsters to roam those streets. All these years later, 45 seasons later, you have all of these people that are roaming these same sort of meandering walkways and sort of hidden nuggets throughout the whole scare zone. They're doing what they can to bring it to life in the world of Knott's Scary Farm. And it is, I could tell you as a talent, it was definitely intimidating for me when I first worked it, going from a smaller scare zone like the Swamp, which was like the size of Fog Alley by itself. That's it. And going from there working there for a couple of years and then going to Ghost Town was really intimidating. It took me like a couple of weeks to really get my bearings and really kind of get a groove in there. But as a fan, I mean, it's, when I think of Knott's Scary Farm, I think of Ghost Town. It immediately is when somebody says the words Knott's Scary Farm, I think of some portion of Ghost Town. And so, that's, a massive destination for thousands and thousands of fans that go every year. They love walking through Ghost Town, on their way to whatever maze destination they're headed to.
Yeah, and I think that's a testament to really what these people are doing and what people have done in the past to have that type of reaction where you talk about Knott's Scary Farm and the immediate thing that you think of is Ghost Town, and you think fog, and you think sliders. It's incredible that it leaves such an impact on people that's the first thing that they think of.
Yeah.
And whenever I take new fresh meat, if you will, to Scary Farm who have never been, like my first order of agenda before any maze is to go through Ghost Town.
Yeah.
Walk down Fog Alley and have that experience because there's nothing like it and you cannot replicate it. Like no Halloween Horror Nights, no Fright Fest, no Queen Mary. Nobody could recreate the feeling of that scare zone. No. And I think it's so much fun to see the look on people's faces when they're walking through and they kind of have their hands up where it looks like they're a mime. They're just trying not to hit people while they're walking into the fog.
Yep.
And sparks fly literally as a slider goes past them and the look of fear on their face that quickly transforms into a smile and they say, "This is awesome. Like, there's no better feeling to introduce somebody to something like that.
Or they stay scared.
Or they stay scared, which is hysterical in
Yeah.
and out of itself.
I mean, we just sit there and watch, or we grab dinner on the patio of Ghost Town Grill and sit there and watch
watch people get scared all
yeah,
night.
we spend like half our night there sometimes, and we don't get tired of it.
Or if we're not eating dinner, we'll sit on a planter in the shadows, like you said, Ted, and just watch. Just watch people walk in and get terrified. Because it's almost an art form what these people are doing. And it's so nice to be able to sit down and appreciate what these people are doing because we love it so much. And so, I mean, it is just beyond me the impact that the Scare Zone has made on the industry as a whole.
Yeah. No, I mean, I could gush about Ghost Town for all day long. But as far as what these folks are doing today, I think they're doing a fantastic job. I worked with a handful of them are still there. And all of these, the talent that are working it, they're sort of, they're the torch bearers, they're carrying the torch, that the people before them, laid years ago. And so I think they're doing a fantastic job. High energy. Ghost Town has always been, somewhat challenging in as far as coverage goes because of its scope and its size. And, I thought, at least for opening weekend, it was well covered and did notice a good handful of characters. It's it's a little bit harder to see identifiable characters in Ghost Town, especially in Fog Alley and stuff, in areas like that, because it's so dark, it's so foggy. All most guests are reacting to is this loud crash of a slide or a bang or whatever it is of some sort of character popping out of the shadows and then racing off. And so it's a little bit more difficult, I think, to see the identifiable characters unless you're there a little bit earlier in the day, and then you could see them, doing the rope drop and all that stuff, and that's kind of an opportunity to really see, like, Otis and Gecko and the Bride and different folks that are identifiable that really sort of make a massive imprint in sort of the identification of Ghost Town. But for the most part, throughout the night, it's really hard to find, different types of identifiable characters.
I find if you kind of stay over by like the schoolhouse and the gun shop, then you can kind of catch them over there. Like that's where we saw the nun. We saw Merrick over there one night. So
yeah. No, I was shaking my head because she's terrifying.
The nun,
like she's disturbing. Like it isn't like she goes boo scared. It's like she's like at your feet, like speaking in tongues and Latin and stuff. It's just really disturbing.
I know, I love
it. Like I think about that every now and then. No, what she does is fantastic. Yeah, but it is extremely disturbing. And I agree with you that it is hard to kind of identify people in the fog unless you're weirdos like us who know them or walk through that area so many times that you've become accustomed to who these characters are. And when you come back the next year, you're looking for that character. Like, I love Ghost Town Street's Death. I love Death. He's awesome. He scares me every single time I walk through there, and he's one of the monsters I look forward to the most. Or Seaweed or Double D and all these other people that walk through there. It's just an incredible place to be. It really is. Like you said, we could gush about it forever. And we should just stop while we're ahead.
Okay.
But that pretty much sums up the scare zones. We have those 4 scare zones that encompass the entire park. There is no place to hide here at Not Scary Farm. So that makes it really interesting and unique compared to a lot of places because, Six Flags, there's really no monsters on the hill. You don't ever really find monsters on the hill. They're at the top of the hill. But all the way up, like at Samurai Summit, there's nothing there. Universal Studios, you have to go out of your way to go through scare zones. It's really difficult. And a few other places. But this, it encompasses everything. Every single corner. And the only place you could hide is the bathroom because they're not allowed to go in there.
Or by the Elvira show this year.
There didn't seem to be a lot of clowns over there.
They don't go over there this year.
I will hope that they do go over there. Maybe it was just a fluke. But they're pretty much everywhere, which is fantastic. And this year, they are boasting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different mazes and one themed attraction for the event. So the themed attraction this year, which is brand new, something they haven't done before, is called Timber Mountain Log Ride Halloween Hootenanny. Now, when a lot of people heard this, they got really excited because we don't often get layovers for the long ride that are super effective. I feel like they used to be pretty effective, but not so much anymore.
Well, and then they didn't do it after the renovation.
Yeah, well, they did. Didn't they do Evil... Correct me if I'm wrong, Ted. Did they do Evil Dead after the renovation, or was that before the renovation?
It was before the renovation.
Was there anything else after that, or was Nikki right?
I am right.
No.
Dang it.
I love being right.
Just asking.
Sorry.
Just curious. But yeah, so this is the first time that we have something in it, and it's actually a year, not a year round, but like a day and night attraction, because during the day it's still spooky, scary for the kids having a good time. It's the Halloween hootenanny, but at night they'll have some monsters actually in there, live actors, which I fell in love with this so fast. Because like we keep saying, there's these different aspects to the event. And for me, this reflects like this traditional Halloween silly spookiness that, you know, sometimes a lot of events that take themselves too seriously are missing. And you have this, which kind of runs that line and balances it really, really well. Plus, then you have the monsters in there.
Yeah, I think this is an excellent solution to the sort of the issues that they've had in the past. All right, so what do we do with the log ride? You know, if we create a layover that's too intense, then that ruins it for the daytime guests, right? And and in years past, you know, they would just put you know, black cloth over, like, you know, the decapitated heads and stuff like that in the sawmill. But that ruined the show for, you know, tourists that were here for Knott's Berry Farm. So that wasn't a really great solution. But this really is. And so, just like you said, you know, it gets upped a little bit more during Knott's Scary Farm because now you have live talent inside. And then it's going to be great for the daytime visitors for Knott's Spooky Farm and all that stuff. So kids will like it, and it's not too threatening or anything like that with the basic theming that they have. And I think the music, sort of the original soundtrack that they've created and all that stuff helps lend it to almost this whimsical kind of feel for it. So that way the youngsters, when they go through it, I think are going to feel that much more comfortable. So it's really not a very scary type of thing for them. But during Knott's Scary Farm, it was fun. It's festive, and you know it celebrates Halloween, which is wonderful, and plus you've got some great monsters that are working there, and some of the scares that I saw that they've incorporated with sound effects and things like that and lighting, I thought were very effective, more so than what we had ever seen in the past. So I think they've done a really fantastic job with it.
Yeah, and I feel like sorry, you go first. Go for it.
I agree completely. Like a few of the monsters caught me off guard. Like when we were on the ride, and I was also scared of getting splashed by water, but that's a whole other level of fear.
Most of that fear came from that. But I agree as well. And what I love is that every single year you see Scary Farm kind of evolving and changing technologies for their scares and their lighting mixed with their audio, and it seems to get better and better every year. And I feel like this is the pinnacle of that, where you said these scares are getting very effective, and in this case, for us going on it, it was very effective. I got startled a lot in this ride, and I really wasn't expecting much, because in the previous layovers, I felt like it just kind of was slapped in there, and it really never felt like it was truly lived up to what I remembered it being. Because I don't know if it was just me being young, but I always remembered Log Ride and Mine Ride being the two scariest things at Scary Farm.
Yeah, I mean, before you started going, they absolutely were. They were the main attractions for many years at Knott's Scary Farm. They were sort of overshadowed even the mazes. But I do want to say one last thing about the log ride is them putting the skull back up on the front of it above the main drop sort of opening.
Yeah.
You know, that was really cool that they did that, because for so many years throughout especially the early 90s and stuff, when they had a skull up there, it was sort of like the way, you know, we've got the castle for Disneyland or Spaceship Earth for Epcot. You know, you had this really kind of massive milestone.
It's an iconic image.
It was this iconic image that just screamed Knott's Scary Farm, and so I'm happy that they really did that, because that was so cool to see that.
And it probably like brings back a lot of memories too for you and for people who used to go where they used to have it.
Yeah, I think it does, and it certainly did for me, and I hope it's something that they continue doing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's a thumbs up for me on the Timber Mountain Log Ride. Halloween Hootenanny.
Definitely.
Which, by the way, all that music is Crazy Kirk and the Hillbillies. So it's like special music for the attraction. And one thing that I absolutely love, that they went the extra mile. Even the instructions and safety instructions for getting onto the attraction were redone for the ride. So it's not like they just played the regular old safety spiel. It was redone and rethemed for the attraction.
Which, by the way, I thought was extremely excellent. That the person that did that, I thought was fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes. And the fact that somebody even thought of that, I commend them for even addressing something like that, because if I were to have done that, I wouldn't have thought of that. But you know, that's the devil's in the detail, and even if it's the instructions, it's still that amount of detail that goes into it.
Right. Well, you know, back in the day, and I hate to keep going back to this, but they used to do that. They used to have full-on canned audio that would be in the queue for the mine ride and for the log ride. And it would talk about, you know, welcome to Terror Mountain Log Ride. And it was this, creepy monster guy talking about all of the horrific things that you're going to be seeing on the log ride. And they did the same thing for the mine ride, because they helped kind of create the story that was going on in those attractions at the time. And so for them to kind of go that little extra step to do a new recording for Halloween Hootenanny, I thought was a really cool touch.
Yeah. On top of that, then we also have the mazes, like now, which are the main attraction.
Yep.
But now we have the mazes, like I said, 9 different mazes, and we'll just start jumping into these things. Let's start off at Voodoo. Voodoo has been around for quite a while. Hasn't really changed over the years. This is the first time that I feel like has had a major change. So instead of it being just the normal walking through the facade at the front and going through the swamps, they've completely turned it around, and now you enter through the swamps and end at the facade. Which at first, I'm not gonna lie, I actually was like, oh well, that's kind of silly. Like, I don't understand how that's gonna make anything better. But as soon as we had come out of it, I remember looking at you, Nikki, and I said, that was way more jarring than I ever expected it being, because you don't ever think about it approaching it from the opposite direction. And they didn't always have the same actor in the same spot all the time from the previous year. And the different kind of scare tactics that they would have to implement in order to effectively scare someone changed, which made it a lot more exciting for me, as well as the fact that they completely changed the ending, which is really cool, which I really enjoyed. And I thought was actually more effective than anything they've done in the previous years.
I have mixed feelings about it. I don't know.
Me too.
I mean, I kind of thought, I don't know. I mean, I really liked the original concept of going from like a standard sort of Mardi Gras, New Orleans feel to, and then going into the darker depths of the bayou when it first started. Doing it this way was, I thought, good. I did feel that some of the scares were a little bit more effective than I anticipated, which I do agree with you on. But I do feel that it was a little too still recognizable, even going backwards for me. At least going through that initial forest, going into the buildings, that kind of felt like a little bit different. And then, you know, the ending with the scare, I won't ruin it for anybody, but that was kind of cool. But for the most part, for me, I felt that it was okay, but it was not really up to par with most of their other attractions this season.
I agree. And like I think it was a bold and smart move to have a maze which, like, going into its third or fourth year, just to like completely flip it on its head and just be like, we're going through it backwards. Like, it was a good way to freshen up something that needed to be freshened up for repeat guests. But yeah, I'm just not sure if it's because we've gone through it so many times that it wasn't quite as effective as I wanted it to be, or if it was something else. But I enjoyed it. But I don't know if I would like make it a priority to go through any more this season.
I do have to say that like all three of us are coming from the point of view of people who have gone through this maze multiple times.
Yeah, I wish I could see it with fresh
times.
eyes.
So we don't have the point of view of somebody who's not gone to this attraction, who's never been through it before, or maybe even just went through it once last year.
Yeah.
You know, what they really think of the attraction, how it differs from the previous years, because I think we all have that thing memorized down pat, like that layout pretty easily, because we like it so much. I do think it's kind of getting on its last legs. I do think that probably we would need something new. But at the same time, like what they've done, I think they could probably end up changing it a bit more to make it something different, kind of like what they did with Trick or Treat, which we'll talk about later.
I think they could have had a whole new story and like fresh monsters, like, kids going through a graveyard in Louisiana and getting lost and ending up in this rundown, house or something, like something like that. Just some new story to add on to this old maze, I think would have made it, one step better, instead of like, Papa Ligma, what are you doing in a graveyard? It's like, that kind of threw me off too, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And by the way, just a full disclaimer, I mean, for any of your listeners that haven't been at all or ever to Knott's Scary Farm, you're right, we're being like ultra nitpicky. Like
we are.
We're being really
if you've
nitpicky.
ever been to Knott's Scary Farm and you go through Voodoo, it's going to be incredible. You'll love it. We're just, just like your favorite coaster or whatever. After a while, it a certain way, and you're just like, okay, are you okay with any kind of changes it makes? So for this, we're being ultra critical, but for the most part, I do agree that thematically or creatively, as far as the theming went, something could have been done that's a little different, kind of like what you said, even if it was kids going through a graveyard or a traditional New Orleans funeral going through, whatever it is, something that kind of gave it a little bit more of an alteration from what I noticed. But again, if you've never been through it, you're going to love it.
Yes.
I agree. If I were to, like, out of all the mazes we see this year, because eventually, things do leave, that's just the way it goes. To create new mazes, one maze kind of has to go. I feel like this might be on the chopping block this year.
I have another one in mind, but we'll get to
I know
it.
which one you're talking about, and I do agree, but we'll get there eventually.
I have two in mind.
And going down the list, as well as literally across the way from Voodoo, you have Paranormal Inc., which debuted 2 years ago to rave reviews of many people. And I kind of feel like that maze really changed a lot of thoughts of what you could do and what's possible to do in an attraction like this for a Halloween event. And I feel like since then, it's been firing on all cylinders to a certain extent. It really hasn't changed that much, but I feel like it's still effective in certain ways. I would love to see it updated with some different stuff. Like you said, maybe a different storyline again. But overall, I think these scares are very, very effective because there's just, I don't know about you guys, but that maze is really chaotic. Like, there's just so much crap going on all at once that you look one way and then by the time you look back, there's a monster in your face. And that's terrifying.
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely revolutionized Knott's Scary Farm, in my opinion. It's very near and dear to my heart. And so when it opened, I mean, it really solved a very challenging problem that Knott's Scary Farm suffered from in the past, was to have these huge amount of guests pulsed through an attraction the way that is done in Paranormal Incorporated years and years ago. They had this maze called Lair of the Vampire, which was incredible. It was very theatrically driven, and they basically broke people into smaller groups to go through and see these sort of acts that were going on throughout the maze. And in between the acts, you would have actual scare portions. One of the most beautiful mazes Knott's Scary Farm's ever produced. But the lines were horrendous because it back the pulsing the people through did not work with that many kind of that amount of guests, and so the lines were like 3 hours long, and it just became a mess. Ooh. And so
sounds like Mirror to me.
Well, that was a big, that's kind of somewhat similar on a smaller scale. And so they tried it a couple of different times and places throughout the years, and it just never really quite worked. However, Paranormal Incorporated, based on its design and stuff, really solved that problem and showed that it could be done. And so I think it's going to play a bigger role than even Knott's Berry Farm knows. I think this is something that's impacting the theme park industry, which I think is incredible. And so with that said, I do love it, and it's chaotic, it's scary, and very intense, and I've spent a lot of time inside that thing, and still enjoy it every October. For the last couple of seasons, it's so cool to go through that maze and see it on fire with these great talent bringing it to life.
I agree. I'm not tired of it yet. It's more or less it's the same as when it debuted. A few changes, a few monsters not in the same places, but I still love it. I know it by heart now, but I am excited to see the wheelchair moving, but then you see something on the screen, all those things. It hasn't lost any appeal for me.
I feel like it's one of those mazes that no matter how many times you start going through, you'll always start to see something different, or like a new detail that pops out, because that maze, out of a lot of the mazes that we have at this park, is incredibly detailed. And I think it's so much fun. Like you said, you go through and you look at the TV that has somebody in the wheelchair that's getting tortured, but when you look at the wheelchair in real life, there's nothing in it. But then if you look to your right over there, there's all these banging doors and stuff. There's so many things going on. There's so many fine details to distract you for those monsters. And if I were in a maze, I'd want to be in that one, because it's the perfect prime opportunity to scare the living daylights out of somebody in that maze. and the reason why I know is because it's happened to me. You've heard me scream plenty of times in that, and I don't scream that often.
It happened to me this year already.
Yeah. Every time. It's guaranteed. So if you have a maze that is on the older end but is still effective, minor changes at most.
Yeah, I agree.
Moving on to the next one, I think maybe, assuming that we're all on the same page about the ones we were talking about leaving, behind it is Tooth Fairy.
The tooth needs to be pulled.
The tooth needs to be pulled for you, and I feel like the Tooth Fairy has run out of sharp teeth.
Yeah.
It's gumming now, just gumming people. Tooth Fairy has been around for quite a long time, and it definitely was effective the first few years that it was around, and I feel at this point it's kind of run its course. There doesn't seem to be too much that's being changed up about it. I know that they've changed the ending a few times now, and I think that what they've done for the ending kind of helps build it a bit, but then for me it kind of is a letdown from what they've done in the past. I'm sad to say it because I actually do truly enjoy it, but for me, it just needs to go. I think its time is up for sure.
Yeah, especially just things that they let go in the maze. Even when we were at the announcement at Midsummer Scream, and they were talking about this maze, and they're like, oh, and there's the X-ray room, and there's this and that, and I was just thinking, none of that's going to be working.
Because it wasn't last year when they announced it.
And I was right, so it's they're not giving it love, and it shows. I mean, I loved it the first year, and I think it's losing steam.
Remember when it first opened? I really liked the skeleton key room that it had, which was the little kid's bedroom or whatever.
Oh yeah,
and he was having a nightmare or something.
Yeah, and so I really liked that when it was designed as a skeleton key room. Now we just walk through it as just a regular, a maze room. But yeah, this is my second maze that I would probably say we need to do away with. But I'm right there with you guys. I think it was pretty cool. Sort of, I guess, the shock value of, having a bunch of, static props of kids in there and the kind of gross stuff that they've got. was interesting the first year, but now, it does seem to have lost some love, and a lot of the attention to detail that we see in the other mazes, this severely lacks. And so, again, if you've never been to Knott's Scary Farm, you're going to like it. But even still, you will clearly notice that it is not at the same level as some of these other mazes that are present at the event.
It was also a lot less populated with scare actors this year.
I totally
felt
agree.
that way too.
Yep.
You go a long stretch without seeing anybody. Like, I remember the room with all the eyeballs and the teeth, and then at the very end they had the projection of the bloody mouth screaming.
Yep.
There was like 3
In
actors
years past,
in
there's
there.
like 3, 4, even
Yeah.
5 sometimes actors in there to distract you and to get in your face and startle scares and things like that. There was one actor in that room when we went through, which was really disappointing.
Yeah.
I mean, and I say this in every single conversation about every single haunt that there can possibly be, is that when you walk through a maze, it is really about timing. Sometimes you go through a maze and you really just happen to catch it when someone's going on a shift break or something, or like people have moved around a little bit and it's just not as effective as it was 5 minutes ago. And I'm not quite sure how well that plays with this one at this point, because I know a lot of people who've gone through this year already and we're like, this is rough. So
I think it's just understaffed.
yeah.
I don't think it was like a shift change issue. I think it's overall it's not as staffed as it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I just think that for me, I think even if it was properly staffed, I just don't think. I think it's just done. I just you could feel it. You could feel it in the talent. You could feel it in the sort of the lack of, like you were saying, the things that weren't really turned on or working and stuff. It just, it's just like, it just didn't have a real strong kind of life around it. So
Yeah.
that's my 2 cents about it. Yeah.
I think we're all in agreement.
I also get really grossed out going through that blackout room because I just think about how many people have touched it.
It's
Yeah.
disgusting.
It's it needs to go. Okay.
It's not fuzzy because it's fur.
Ew.
Ew.
Moving on to the next maze, Special Ops Infected.
So if you love living a video game, this is for you. Because you get to kill zombies, and what's better than that?
I mean, I still like it this year. I mean, I loved it when they moved it to where it is now. I mean, I had fun in Camp Snoopy the first year, not so much the second year. When they moved it to its own maze, I kind of appreciated it all over again, and I had just as much fun going through it this year as I did before.
I'm on the same page as you. I think that it was fun the first year in Camp Snoopy. The second year, I don't feel like it really had the impact that I feel like the designers really intended it to have by only making it one track. And then once they placed it in an actual maze environment, I feel like that's where it really gained its potential and has really excelled in that, because you have very sharp corridors, very tight corridors, sharp corners and things like that. A lot of places for monsters to really utilize to scare the living daylights out of people, especially when you're so focused on shooting the gun, you're distracted already. By placing this gun in your hands, it is distracting the patron who's going through this maze, and it already makes them susceptible to these scares. And I think that's genius. But overall, I do think the experience is fun. Who doesn't like being given a target, like a laser gun, and then to get points?
Yeah.
It's interactive, and I feel like it gives Scary Farm another layer.
Totally. And especially, especially pulling it off at a theme park level. I mean, there's a lot of independent haunts around that had kind of toyed with the idea of using the laser guns, and there was even, paintball and all that stuff. But to do it at a theme park level, I think it was, really, really brave and really awesome that they pulled it off. But quickly to the point on, Camp Snoopy versus where it's at now, I agree with you. I love the idea of kind of running around, a 6-acre, scare zone, or what was a previous scare zone, and shooting, zombies and stuff. But I think by moving it into its current location, allows the folks, the designers, to really kind of tinker with ideas and really start to build strong ways to entertain these guests that are going through. Because in the Camp Snoopy world, it would, they didn't have as many luxuries as a controlled environment that they like the controlled environment that they have now. And so I think it's exciting. It's fun. The lines were really long, and so people love it. It has a massive draw, and I think it was really effective, and I had a great time doing it. And I think they're still very successful with the concept, and I think they have so many more opportunities to really continue to grow the concept and advance the concept. So, I'm stoked that it's at Knott's Scary Farm.
Yeah.
For me, like I love it when we went through on the first night. There was a couple of guys behind us, and I loved hearing them say this because I just found it really interesting. Because you hear the conversation come up of who's better, Scary Farm or Universal, which I never like answering because it's not something that's easily said. It's always preference. But the guys behind us is like, what is Universal doing? They need to get on page with, like, on par with Knott's. Like, those guys were pumped to be running through shooting zombies. And I feel like that this type of topic really speaks to a certain age range, and usually the age range that comes to Scary Farm too, which I think is kind of genius in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally agree.
This is something I don't want going anywhere. I would love to see them tinker with this for a long time and change. Even the theming in the storyline, I would love to see change at some points, because this is something that you could actually keep for a long time.
Oh, yeah,
you could keep the concept.
Forever.
You could keep the concept of the guns and the shooting zombies. Just change the settings, change the story. Further along the story, every 3 years you have the next extension of the story, and all of a sudden, over the 12 years, you have this massive story that people would know from those each iteration.
I still don't like the mutant zombie alien thing at the end that you can't shoot.
You mean
though.
Pinocchio?
I hate him.
That thing used to be in the swamp, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah,
There
I don't
are
like it either.
there are things this year at Haunt that I've noticed that have been repurposed the most times.
Yeah.
Like particularly in Dark Ride, which we'll get to.
We'll get to that.
But this year, for some reason, more than any other year, I've noticed a repurposing of props and stuff, and not in a bad way. Like, I actually am entertained because for me, like a Haunt nerd, it's Easter eggs. It's like, oh my god, I remember where that was. I remember what maze that was in. Just like the big rock guy who was in, what was it called? Dead of Winter last year. He used to be in the like the metal maze before that, and then before that he was in Labyrinth, and before that he was in another thing.
Yep.
So
yep, exactly.
It's always fun to kind of pinpoint those props when you're a nerd. But moving on, next maze we got
the Red Barn, and I liked it this year. And if you listen to our other episode that we did when we were talking about the Midsummer Scream and the Knott's announcements, I said that I didn't like Red Barn last year, and it was kind of like a last minute thing, and I said I had hopes for it this year that they can really do what they wanted to do last year, and I think they did. And to me it was a whole new maze, brand new. Like, I really enjoyed it. Yeah,
I thought it was cool. I mean, it took me a couple times to kind of find out like what was going on, because I think they were having some issues on the throughput. But the idea is there were these rooms, these sections of the maze that would appear like you're trapped and that you're locked in. And the story, I don't know if it's like official anywhere, but at least what we're seeing is there's like this summer school field trip of kids that have been sort of thrown into this horrific, backwoods, hillbilly, freak Texas Chainsaw Massacre type of environment. And they're victims running around telling us to watch out and beware of all of these freaks that are murderers. And so there's these rooms where you turn a corner and there's like no way out. And then, one of these characters, one of the survivor victims from the high school, are able to get you out, or one of the actors gets you out. So, I mean, we got to see some of it in full operation working, and some of it was not working as well, and it turned more into a traditional sort of walkthrough maze. But the ideas are there, and first and foremost, I appreciate any type of sort of deviation from your traditional walkthrough attraction at a theme park, because you go to any of these events, you on those crowded nights, you're going to end up in the conga lines and all that stuff, right? So anytime a park can sort of create a little bit of variety to that presentation, I'm all in. And so I hope that they can really kind of get that dialed in, because I think it does have potential to be really effective. Beyond that, I thought the characters were really strong and the scares were really, really good.
Yeah, and when we got out of it the second time, because the first time it didn't have this, and I got angry because they had promised this. But the second time we went through this, my review for the maze was 2 words: real chainsaws. And because they made this big hoopla the first year it was out that they're going to have chainsaws, but when you saw them, they were basically toys. They weren't real chainsaws. They were just pieces of plastic that made noise, and I was really upset by that because I felt like it was a bit misleading.
Yep.
Especially to a lot of haunt fans who really expect something to be genuine. So when they said real chainsaws, I was like, I don't know. We'll see. I didn't really trust them. So the first time we went through, there was nothing. And I just saw the plastic one hanging on the wall again, and I got really angry. And then we went through it a second time that night, and there was a real chainsaw, finally! He wasn't raising it anywhere. He was keeping it like knee level, but still, it's just unnerving to hear that sound and the real sound and having someone get anywhere near you with it. So I feel like they have made up for the mistakes they've had in the past just with one chainsaw for me in my mind. But I've also noticed that they've utilized a lot of different pieces of technology in this maze as well, because we have this really cool projection of 2 victims trying to get away, and the guy slicing the guy in half trying to get away with the chainsaw, and just like all his guts are falling out. And you could tell that they've kind of redesigned a bit of the layout of the attraction so that you could add a few different moments in there, which I really appreciated. And like you said, I think like the layout of like the way that they're kind of approaching it this year and making it a bit different than any other type of maze attraction is a lot more appealing to me, because at the beginning you have this guy who's like screaming at you on the microphone, and then you have to go underneath him and he's still screaming at you, and even if you get past him, he still has the opportunity to come back to you on the other end and harass you, which I think is fantastic. I actually got really scared right there in that moment because I was staring at him. As I turned the corner, there's this dead body in the bale of hay, but it's just the face, and I thought it was an actor, so I screamed really loud. So it got me, and I feel like it's a lot more effective this year.
Yeah, I'm just happy that it improved its second year.
Yeah, and
you can't say that about many mazes.
That's right. That's true. I mean, not often does the maze improve its second year. I mean, Dead of Winter didn't, and a few other things have out in the past. One thing I did notice, and I'm not sure if you've noticed this too, Ted, but at least the times that we went through, the original spots that they were really utilizing the first year for scares, they weren't really utilizing them again this year. There was a few moments where I distinctly remember actors being, and there was nobody there in those moments.
Yeah.
They moved a lot of them. A lot of the scares got changed.
Yeah, I think I did kind of notice that a little bit. I mean, I guess I didn't really think about it too much, but I'm guessing now that I think about it, maybe by incorporating these sort of pseudo high school students from, their camp, incorporating those characters to really engage the guests probably replaced actual scare actors that were hidden and scaring before, because before it was a lot of like the hillbilly kind of characters and all that spread throughout the whole thing. There was a little bit less of that because you had a lot of these high school kids yelling at you to keep moving, which I thought was kind of interesting, because that way when one of the characters did scare, it was a little bit more spread out, and I felt a little bit more effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree in that way. I mean, I feel like also the type of tension and the type of pace that they're trying to keep in that maze with those characters, trying to warn you of the things that lay ahead, really help build all of it up so that those scares were effective, like you had said, because it keeps you on your toes. You don't who's good, who's bad, who's trying to help me. We're rushing through this area. People are telling me to run. It really keeps you on your toes, which helps those scare actors in certain situations. So
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it this year as opposed to last year. It's no secret to anybody that I disliked it last year. I actually really disliked it, but it's changed my mind. It's done a very good job.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
All right.
Move on to Shadowlands.
Yes,
Yeah.
Shadowlands.
What'd you guys think?
I loved it last year, and I think it was a good second year maze. Like, I didn't like it any better than I did last year.
Do you think the shock and awe of the first year has worn off for you, and then the fact that not a whole ton has changed, you're kind of left wanting a bit more?
Maybe a little bit. I don't know. It's just I didn't come out of it this year feeling the same as I came out of it last year. I got scared a few times. There's scenes that I was really excited to see again. Like the girl in the hallway that kind of like disjointedly moved towards you with that creepy sound. Like, there are scenes that I appreciated seeing again, and I was excited to see those scenes, and I enjoyed it, but maybe just a little bit of the shock and awe from last year wore off.
And maybe it's just being overshadowed a little bit with Shadowlands is being overshadowed a little bit by some of the newer things that are there. It's like the new shiny toy that you're more interested in, possibly. Like you said, I definitely got scared as well. And this maze is one of the most beautiful mazes that they have there, in my opinion. It's just gorgeous.
Oh, yeah.
You just want to stand there and stare at a lot of the things. But I do agree. I kind of feel like I don't know why I was expecting more. I knew that nothing was going to change.
Yeah.
I think it was because I enjoyed it so much last year that I was having high unrealistic expectations of it this year.
Maybe.
So,
I think it was just as good as last year, though.
oh yeah, I don't think it's gone down. I think it's on par.
Well, I think that when you go back, it'll be a lot better. I know this opening weekend they were having some technical issues, and so a lot of some of the cool key moments were not as they weren't running on all cylinders compared to what they were doing last year, and so I think for any of the listeners that are gonna go to it, it should be pretty good. I think a little bit more like what we saw last year, and then I think when you two go again, it should be a lot better. I think there's going to be some ironing out of some of the sort of the nicks that are going to be that need to be fixed. I think that's probably being done this week, and so I think you'll see some positive changes this weekend and for the rest of the run.
And I mean, like it's even with those issues, this maze is still like in the top 5 mazes that you should be checking out at Scary Farm.
Yeah.
Because of how good it is.
It's very, very, very good, and it's really unique to the theme park industry when it comes to Halloween events. And I think there's only like 1 or 2 sort of Japanese-themed haunted attractions, I think, in the country. And so it's incredible. It's an incredible maze with stunt rigging and oversized scares and really unique characters. So, I mean, I'm a fan of it, and ready to check it out again because I wasn't able, none of us saw it running on all cylinders. So I'm hoping that next time it's up to where it was last year.
Yeah, we'll definitely be going through it several times this year. So.
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. And I think it also speaks to how good it is because when we were there in line, I mean, the line was massive. Even the line for front of the line was long. So, there was a lot of people there wanting to get into it, remembering it from the previous year of how good it was.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
right.
And moving forward, the next 3 are really the 3 big new things that they have this year. Or at least 2 of them.
Yeah.
Brand new. One of them retooled.
Technically new.
Technically new. But still, these are the 3 that people are talking the most about. And the first one that comes up is Trick or Treat Lights Out. Now, this is a maze that previously was at Scary Farm for quite a while. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it debuted in the 40th anniversary. It's when the Green Witch became the icon of the park, at least at that time. And it was really popular.
Yep.
Am I incorrect? Did it debut then?
I think it did. Yeah, I think you're right. And it very popular. And, last year we kind of felt like, all right, it's probably on its last legs. And so when there was sort of this reimagining of the presentation of it, very excited to check it out, right?
Yeah, I was honestly a little surprised because, like you said, I think everyone knew it was on its last legs, and the only way that I could have imagined them getting rid of it is if they were going to do a new icon for the park, because there was no way that you could have the Green Witch as the icon and not have a maze for her. So if they were going to get rid of the maze, then that means they might be getting rid of the icon. But it really shocked me when they said they were doing this, because I think it's different enough to warrant people to go check it out, and I feel like it's gotten scarier, but also not scarier at the same time. If that makes any sense, it's really confusing.
Totally makes sense.
Yes.
Because I feel like we're just really familiar with the layout. I mean, we're gonna keep saying it's like we're a broken record. If you haven't been, you're gonna love it because you don't know what to expect. And I think for us, people who are familiar with those sets, the fear now is coming from not being able to see around the corners as opposed to, just going through the maze like any old maze.
Yeah.
Right.
Like we never really explained it.
Oh,
but
yeah,
it's
sorry.
Like it's a flashlight maze.
I got ahead of myself.
So lights out, no lights at all. Each guest, which I appreciate, each guest is handed a flashlight. I feel like the flashlights could have been utilized a little more. Like, I feel like most of the maze, they were just on. They flickered a few times, but, I just feel like there wasn't enough variation in what they can do. Because I know they can do a lot more. Maybe turn red in one room or, go out in another hallway. And I enjoyed the maze. I didn't get scared except by one ghillie suit outside.
He got you, we went through it. We've gone through this like 3 or 4 times now, and
Yeah.
he's gotten you every single time.
Yeah, but also, my one pet peeve, if you go through it more than once, the actors are always in the same spot. They don't move.
They don't move that much,
They don't
no.
move at all. But I did enjoy it. It was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I guess what I liked about it was that it was just kind of more creepy I don't want to say it was more creepy than it was as a regular haunted attraction. I think it was creepy going through any kind of haunted attraction, really, with just the flashlight is kind of cool, without any thematic lighting at all, right? But beyond that, I know we're kind of sort of biased because we're so familiar with the layout and the floor plan of the existing, attraction. But I thought it was, for me, I think there was a lot of buildup for it between the announcement event and Midsummer Scream or wherever they announced it.
Yeah, you're right.
So there was like this massive buildup, like this is going to revolutionize everything. And I'm like, okay. So I was all in. I'm like, I can't wait to check this out. It's creepy. I don't know how scary it is for me. But I think if you've never been to Knott's Scary Farm or unfamiliar with the existing floor plan, think you should probably, at least at bare minimum, find it creepy as well, and at least, if anything, entertaining. But I don't know how like ultra over the top scary it was. Like for me, like a Red Barn was like a lot more scary than Trick or Treat.
Yeah, I feel like with this attraction, it's more or less just about the tension as opposed to it is about the scares.
Yeah.
The tension of having to move your flashlight around, because even being through it 4 times, I still have the tension of what if I put my flashlight up and something's right there.
Yeah.
Which is kind of terrifying. But I do agree that it is a little bit creepier, and I'd love to address the maze that it used to be first, because then you can kind of gauge on where it is now, because before it was the facade was very stylized, very cartoony witch house. You walk in and all the dead kids would be scaring you, and to a certain extent the inside is the same now, but now the front of the maze, this facade, is turned into this very decrepit, very realistic house. And we've gotten this whole new music package as well that is very reminiscent of like a Stranger Things 80s vibe, or even like Halloween synthesizer type music, which I think definitely sets the tone for this new attraction better. And if I were to ask them to redo a maze that's been there for that long, this is a really good example of what you can do to utilize a different aspect of an attraction. You know, to me, that's better than flipping it backwards. It's better than just changing the Tooth Fairy to a human being on stilts, you know, or even a couple other things that they've done, adding werewolves to gunslingers. I think this is a very good example of what is a really good thing to do for a maze that may be on its last legs and gives it a little bit breath of life.
I fully agree with you. And by the way, yeah, the music, especially toward the exit, like when you're kind of going the outside of the house and stuff, where you could really hear it. Loved it. Very creep show, very Carpenter, you know, Halloween 80s, 70s synthesizer. Loved it. So overall, I loved the vibe of it. But again, I think there might have been opportunities, at least from my observation, for if there was some opportunities there that I thought could actually make this terrifying. And I think they, maybe for a variety of reasons, kept it more creepy, which I think is still really fun.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah. And moving forward, the next two are the big hitters, the brand new ones. And the first one that I'm going to start with, which is actually my favorite of the two, is Pumpkin Eater. This is designed by Daniel Miller, somebody who's done, Pinocchio Unstrung, a Tooth Fairy, and a lot of other really messed up mazes. And of course, he's created another one that's really messed up again. And it's based on that nursery rhyme, Peter, Pumpkin Eater. And you go into these very quaint village houses where these women have their faces carved up like jack-o'-lanterns. And it gets very artistic in a way because you end up entering a jack-o'-lantern and it's squishy. You can hear the guts moving around, which that sound to me alone was just too much. And you even get like wet from the guts, which you hate.
Yep.
For me, this maze kind of hit a whole bunch of different notes that I look for within a maze for it to be really, really good. I feel like the maze design was pretty inventive with what he was trying to do, especially given the fact that you're supposed to be walking into a gigantic pumpkin. How do you, other than like having seeds hanging, how do you translate that and how do you make that scary? And I think he did that very, very well, and it fits perfectly within the confines of the Hollow, which is where it's located. I could keep talking about it, but I just really enjoy the theming of this maze a lot.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I thought it was really cool. I loved the queue area. That was so cool, that little quaint village that you're talking about and stuff, and these small little houses and everything. So I really liked it. There were some things that were a little bit more kind of, I thought, cerebral for a maze, but I thought it was really fun. And it was a good, like, traditional example of a haunted attraction, especially at Knott's Scary Farm. Dan Miller, is famous for doing the good, gone bad types of themes, and this is a really perfect example of that. And I thought he did really, really good, and I thought it was very creepy and utilized a lot of traditional gags, but with a little bit sort of a different spin on them, which I thought was really kind of fun and entertaining. And I thought it was, that maze I felt was really kind of creepy as well. There was the definite scares in there, but it was also very creepy. They had some sort of longer scenes where you could that were a little bit more open, that sort of had some room to breathe, where you could kind of allow some of that tension that you were talking about before build, so that way by the time one of the characters did interact, it was to me really darn effective.
I think you were the one who said it that made me laugh, because I'm pointing at Nikki. Yeah. You can't tell. I'm pointing at Nikki. Nikki said this that made me laugh, because I remember going through it and you're like, I feel like the ending was just them wanting to incorporate what was left
Prey.
from Prey.
Like as soon as we were in that corn maze, I was like, oh, they just left Prey up. So that's just a jaded like
Scary Farm nerd.
Scary Farm pass holder who's like, really? They just left Prey up.
And then as soon as you said that, I'm like, I guess it's just Gunslinger's grave and Prey mashed together with a pumpkin in the middle. But
I mean,
the funny thing is that it works. It works.
I loved the vibrating floor towards the end, and my favorite part was also one of Gabe's favorite parts is the makeup on those first two ladies. The carved faces was just beautiful.
In any maze, I think this year that is my favorite makeup that I've seen because it is very disturbing.
Yeah.
Because when you look at it, you're thinking about what caused that.
Yeah.
Which is very, very creepy.
And I love mazes like that. Like you said, there were a few spaces that were more open, and I agree with that. And I love mazes where the actors are given room to roam because they're not static and in the same spot every time you go through. Like the main guy, like the what's his name?
The Pumpkin Eater?
The Pumpkin Eater. He was in a different spot both times we went through. And I was like, oh, you weren't there last time. And it got me, and I think it's a little bit of a pet peeve when I go through a maze again. And I'm like, okay, there's someone behind that door. Okay, there's someone behind that curtain. It's like, so I love it when I never know where they're going to be, Yeah,
and now that you were mentioning a couple things, and it reminded me of a couple moments of walking through the attraction because it's not often that an attraction has different notes to it. Usually it's one note all the way through. The type of scares and things that it has the opportunity to do. I feel like, Ted, you said it is very creepy. And there are moments that I feel like those monsters take advantage of those open spaces and make it creepy as opposed to just doing another jump scare. Because I definitely remember going through a few times and being kind of near the front of the pack. And there was a monster who put his fingers really slowly, one after another, around the corner of the wall. So all you saw was this big, spiny hand coming around from the corner, then disappearing. And for me, that small action says so much and sets up so much because it's that tension of what the hell was that?
Yeah.
And knowing you have to go around that corner. And I think that's amazing that they have that opportunity to kind of change things up, kind of like, as much as I like Halloween Horror Nights, as opposed to just having the kind of hidden door scares. You have the opportunity to really expand on what your character is doing and how to scare those people. And it's designed that way, and I think that's smart.
Yeah, and one last note about it. I didn't realize, I totally get it now, like using Prey. They totally did, now that I think about it. So for your listeners, so Prey was, it was a skeleton key last year, and basically incorporated, the cornfield area that you get lost in, and that's sort of what the last area of Pumpkin Eater was. And you're right, I think they probably, I don't know if they probably didn't use the same corn, that would be disgusting, but it was basically kind of very similar to it. And then one last thing, what was the final room with the floor vibration?
Final room was...
What is it with? I did not get it.
I didn't get it either. I was just so concerned with the vibration.
Well, from what I remembered it being, it was almost like we were getting ground up.
Were we getting?
It was like we were. Yeah, it was like we were getting ground up and eaten because that last room was. You see like the Pumpkin Eater guy, and then the next room is like filled with fog and it's orange, and you hear, other than like the vibration, there's like this grinding noise of things. So I'm assuming that is what the ad interpretation of that is us getting eaten or being munched up like the pumpkins. Like he caught us.
Oh. Yeah, I didn't get it because basically on the walls and the vibrating floor, I thought there were like racks of pies. And I'm like, okay, so what is this? So I wasn't too sure, but I'll go with your interpretation.
So we're getting made into pies?
Maybe.
I guess.
I don't know. I didn't quite get it either, but I didn't mind because my feet were sore and
it felt good.
The vibration felt good. I know.
It did.
So moving on to our last maze of the night, I think the one that had the biggest hype behind it, Dark Ride.
Yeah.
And this is another maze from John Cook, the same guy who's done Paranormal Inc., Infected, as well as Shadowlands, all huge hits. And I don't know about you guys, but leading up into this, I was really nervous because no matter how good somebody is, they always end up making a mistake or faltering to a certain extent. I was really nervous about the maze not being good. Like, I was really nervous because I really like John Cook's work. And I was like, oh God, this is a really hard maze to do. How is he going to pull this off? How do you make a dark ride into a maze? And by God, he did it.
Yeah. It was my favorite of the year.
I mean, it is very impressive. Very, very impressive.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, it tells the story of this sort of abandoned dark ride where these people are living inside of it, right? And so, I mean, I was having this discussion with somebody. This might be one of the first Knott's mazes, which is kind of revolutionary if you think about it, where the characters are based off of like real people.
Yeah.
You know, which has not been done before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other than like Gunslinger. But
where it's not really monsters.
Like the first
humans.
year there was no monsters, but still it's kind of like this like old school, like, you know, kind of fantasy type world, but this is like, this could happen. You could have a whole bunch of bums living
you
in
have
an old...
like these transients that are living in this abandoned dark ride. You know, you get warned by the first one that greets you, you know. And so that was interesting. Somebody wrote that it's like this, you know, one review said that it's like this massive love letter to the theme park industry and the dark ride industry. And I agree. I mean, I think it's fantastic. I mean, you want to talk about, I mean, we could spend the next couple hours talking about the Easter eggs that are inside that maze.
And then that was what I was mentioning before, is there's so many.
Yeah. And I you know, I had to go through it a couple of times to kind of figure out what was happening, like thematically and storyline and all that stuff. And, you know, I think, you know, the peak room, I won't ruin it for those who have yet to go, but it's very large and it's very cool. I don't think it's the biggest opening that Knott's has done in a maze, but it's very huge to the point where it's almost like this massive jungle gym, carnival, demonic scare zone, you know, filled with all of these creeps. And the guests, the way the floor plan is, are allowed a decent amount of time in there. And I thought that was really cool. So that way, you know, talking about allowing, you know, veteran talent to kind of go, you know, crazy inside of one room. It was pretty awesome, you know, so that way you have, you know, these really killer monsters that are in there that have a lot of room to work with and a lot of ways to work off one another. And if you are a guest that is fearful of clowns or sort of this type of theme, you're really screwed by the time you get to that final room, because
hey, you got warnings, man. You got warnings from the beginning.
Yeah. And so so I thought that was really fantastic. I just loved the theme stylistically, totally dug it. You know, it's one of the better mazes they've done in a long time. I don't think I could go personally. I mean, as far as saying that it's like better than Paranormal Incorporated when that first debuted, because that was like really mind blowing. But I think this is a very, very strong maze, and it's better than most of the things that the event has produced in the last, you know, 30 years. So, I mean, I think it's incredible. And really, really enjoyed going through it and just kind of digging all of the detail and the clever scares. That was really, really powerful stuff.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I mean, like, for me, it took a while to understand what was happening. There's just so much chaotic action, like chaos happening, that it's really hard to grasp what's exactly happening. And it's almost like a piece of art where you get really close and you see something, and then when you back up really far away, you see something else. I feel like that's what happened with this, because the first time I went through, I was looking at it really close, and I didn't quite get it. I didn't get it at all, and I was really confused, and I was a little disappointed. And we went in again, and as soon as I exited, I had one of those moments of, oh, that's awesome. It just took, you got it really fast.
I loved it the first time.
I'm not as smart as you, Nikki. I'm not as smart as you.
Oh man, I don't think, okay, I don't know if I've ever left a maze with that big of a grin on my face. Well,
It's fun.
maybe Paranormal Inc.
It's really
Yeah,
fun.
like the first year Paranormal Inc. opened, probably the same level of just excitement for me. I do agree that, like, as far as, like, debut mazes go, like, Paranormal Inc. 3 years ago, like, way better, like, just way better of a debut, like, just strongness of maze. Yes, like, first year Paranormal would beat out Dark Ride for me, but oh my gosh, I left this maze so happy the first time I went through it. And when they were explaining it, in all the previews, I was like, okay, you're gonna follow a track through a Dark Ride. That'll be fun. The first time we went, like, behind the scenes and then came back into a different room of the Dark Ride, I was like, oh my god! Like, that's all I'll say, because I don't want to give too much away. But
I was gonna say, without giving too much away, kind of the premise of the whole thing is that you're going into this dark ride that, like Ted has said, is kind of taken over by these transients and weirdos, and you're walking the track of this dark ride, and you hear the music kind of glitching in and out, and the lights and the animatronics are glitching in and out together in sequence. But as soon as you go through, like, the access tunnels through the attraction, it really changes from this cheesy dark ride to very extreme realism. And to see the two different styles in one maze, and the juxtaposition is just so interesting. It's so just black and white and really interesting. It works really well together, because you have these cheesy animatronics and then you have these brick walls in the access tunnels. And I don't know about you guys. This is something that people going through would not see, so I don't care that I'm spoiling it, because it's not a huge thing. But do you guys know the reason? Nikki, I already told you. But Ted, do you know the reason why the power is going in and out?
I don't know if he told me or not. What is it?
So near the end of the maze, like where that big room is, there's the power room, where the main power of the ride is.
Yes.
The reason why the power is going in and out is because there was a pee bottle that got spilled over the main electronic box for the entire ride.
Okay.
So the entire ride is going bonkers because someone spilled pee on it.
No, I did not know that. That's awesome.
Look for that the next time you go through.
It is amazing.
Did somebody tell you that, or did you notice that on your own?
John Cook, the guy who designed it,
Told you.
for our listeners, he was the one who said it. Yeah.
Okay.
So I found that very interesting and very, very funny.
That's rad. That's cool. I'll check it out next time.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just a very, very smart in what it's doing, and I feel like he's hit the nail on the head once again. And I feel like it's hard because, like, you guys are talking about, like, how, like, would you put it up against Paranormal Inc. first year? Probably not. But it also is really hard to compare the two just because of how drastically different they are. And it's not like you could put something like Dark Ride within the same kind of realm as Paranormal Inc. It just wouldn't work that way. So for me, it's like comparing apples to oranges in a manner.
A little bit.
It is. I mean, because listen, with Dark Ride, I think to me it is. In some ways, there's a lot of decent sense of humor to it, and even though it's somewhat macabre, but Paranormal Incorporated is very sinister and it's dark, and there's not a whole lot of sense of humor to it. It was built and designed to be absolutely scary, and I think they achieved that. I think, and again, you're right. I think you could talk to 100 Not Scary Farm fans, and they might tell you totally different things and disagree with me, or you guys, whatever. But I think for me, my personal taste, I thought Paranormal Incorporated for its debut year kind of blew me away more than Dark Ride. But that doesn't take away the fact that Dark Ride's like still a 10. It's still like one of the best mazes ever produced at Not Scary Farm.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And that's all the mazes. And as much as we are very difficult on them, this is an incredible lineup, and one of the strongest lineups that I've seen at Scary Farm in a really long time.
Yes, absolutely. And, I mean, that's stuff that, in the industry we really look at, and how these other events do and what they're doing across the country. And Knott's is extremely strong this year, and I'm happy. I'm happy for them. I mean, we've seen it grow and kind of go through these, years where you look back, you're like, maybe that wasn't as strong. But this year is extremely strong, and the lineup's amazing. And, if there's anybody that was on the fence about like, hey, you know what, I haven't been to Knott's Scary Farm in a long time, or I've never been, this is the year to go. This is the year to check it out, because there's so much going on that's fresh, that is really incredibly amazing when it comes to the production value. And I mean, we don't have to get into it, but I mean, even with The Hanging and Elvira's final year, I mean, there's a whole lot to do at Knott's Scary Farm this year, and I think you're right. It's an amazing lineup, and as far as lineups go, this may be the best that I may have ever seen.
Yeah, and the last time I remember having a lineup that was like anywhere close to this was the 40th anniversary, and I still don't think that was as close to this as it could be.
Agreed.
And if you're looking at this from like a consumer standpoint, there's a lot of options with regards to haunted attractions in Southern California. It's very busy around here. You have those independent ones, you have a lot of the theme park ones. For me, with what you're getting here at Knott's and that quality, this is a place where I would want to spend my money.
Yeah.
Because you have Fright Fest, which is on the cheap, and what you're getting there for that price point, totally worth it. Like, I think that price point over there works. But if you're wanting to look into spending just a little bit more money, but don't want to go as far as Halloween Horror Nights, this is where you need to be. Unless your like pockets are deep, then do everything a billion times. But this to me is the prime example of an event that has, like you said, Ted, a lot to do and a price point that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you're getting quality entertainment on all fronts.
Totally agree.
And then not to mention that this year with the Fright Lane, they've included Fastlane with that. So if you guys buy Fright Lane, you get Fastlane with it. And then you get to ride all these rides at night, which is incredible. And there's a lot of really awesome roller coasters to ride here, which, for me as a haunt nerd, I would never suggest riding roller coasters over going through mazes. But if you have that and have the opportunity, go on Ghost Rider at night. It's awesome. And it like you said, this is the year to go. This is the year to go.
Definitely.
That wraps up 2017 for friggin' Scary Farm, and it is insanity. The fact that it's already here and it's going on.
Crazy, huh?
Gabe has the biggest grin on his face. He's so happy.
Because that means at the end of a workday, I could go down there for a couple hours and enjoy myself.
Yeah.
Because I'm the weirdo who just stands in the middle of a scare zone laughing. I mean, if you enjoy people getting scared and terrorized that much, then you should join me. Watching monsters make people cry. It's pretty entertaining.
Gabe's easy to find in a crowd, so.
Yeah, I'm very easy. Just look for the thing that's better used as a door than a window.
Yeah.
But anyways, Ted, thank you so much for joining us. It was actually really, really awesome having you on and giving a lot of insight from your history with Knott's.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I had a lot of fun. I love your guys' show, like I said. So this is so cool. And, thanks for allowing me to share my thoughts and opinions about this year's haunt. So thank you.
Of course.
Yeah.
And is there any place that people can find you and follow you on Twitter or anything?
I mean, it's all through Ultimate Haunt on Twitter, Ultimate Haunt on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, so, I mean, you could find me.
Yeah, you're around.
I'm around.
And also, do make sure, if you're interested in the history of Knott's Scary Farm's Halloween Haunt, Knott's Scary Farm's Halloween Haunt, look up Ted's book, Picture History, Knott's Scary Farm's Halloween Haunt. It is amazing. It is filled with, I have it in front of me. This thing is incredible. And even if you're just a lover of history, this book is filled with it because you get a good written history of exactly where it came from and where it is now and why every other attraction out here in Southern California and across the United States is what it is. And it's because of this. And it has a lot of awesome pictures of people getting their makeup done from way back when, even original layouts of mazes and photos, and it's just incredible. So if you're a lover of history or a lover of haunts, check out this book. I'm sure you can grab it on Amazon, right?
Actually, the only place you can get it now is inside the magic shop at Knott's Berry Farm because it is officially out of print.
What?
What? And I have a
Yeah.
very special thing here.
Gabe's gonna go buy five more copies.
Yeah, I'm going to go buy 5 more.
There you
Yeah,
go.
exactly. So, if you're ever at Knott's and you want to grab out that book, make sure you go grab it because you heard the man. It is out of print.
Yes.
It's special. So, once again, thank you so much, sir. It was a freaking blast.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
That was fantastic. I love talking to Ted. He's so knowledgeable in all this crap.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and he agreed with me on most things. So
That's true, he
Very
did.
validating.
I bet. Thank you. Thank you for that. I just like having different opinions on things.
Oh, that's fine.
I like being combative. But we really hope you guys enjoyed listening to our episode all about Knott's Scary Farm. There was a couple things we didn't hit in the show. One of the things that we didn't really hit is the hanging in Elvira. Elvira we didn't get to see the night that we went. We actually just recently saw it in between the episode. And we actually think it's probably the best show that she's had at Scary Farm in a while.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's been my favorite show of hers. It was kind of like just pure Elvira, not
It's her
gimmicky.
up front and center.
Yeah, it was really great.
Yeah, and the hanging is divisive either way. Any year, people either think it's funny or people think it's not funny.
Yeah.
So it's really just a matter of your taste and what you think is funny. We personally enjoyed it a lot. There were some really, really funny moments, but there was also some moments that really fell flat. But that being said, it was the opening night, so they're probably still finding their groove.
Yeah, it was hit and miss, but it was enjoyable.
Yeah,
There
exactly.
have been stronger years, there have been less strong years, so, just somewhere in the middle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But overall, Scary Farm is a fantastic value. There's so much there to do, to see, to experience, that it's really hard to fit it all in one night. And I highly suggest that you go check out Knott's Scary Farm this season and head over to knotts.com to figure out how you can buy your tickets.
Yep.
And this season, we're going to be hitting a lot more. We still have some more Halloween episodes to get out. We're going to be hitting Halloween Horror Nights on both coasts, and we've recently hit Queen Mary, so we have an episode coming up about that. And we are freaking tired. We're hitting so many different places that the sleep is not coming easily.
No, I just haven't been sleeping well in general.
I haven't either. I feel like there's been some noises in the background at night. I always think it's the rat, so I wake up to come look because I think the rat has escaped. As it's trying to escape at this moment, if you might be able to hear her.
Very active. Right
Very active. But we've heard noises in this room, so that's odd. We think it's the rat, though, so that's not an issue. But it's pretty loud, so
Yeah.
the rat's either doing something mischievous or something else a-brewing. I'm going to hope it's the rat.
Yeah, hope it's the rat, not the Ouija board.
No, I don't. Unless the rat is playing with the Ouija board in the middle of the night.
Maybe the rat's summoning rat ghosts.
Rat ghosts?
Yeah.
Don't summon rat ghosts. Who knows what other ghosts are going to come through with the rat ghosts. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining in on the fun today. I hope we really enjoyed the episode. And if you guys want to find out more about Knott's Scary Farm, like I said, knotts.com is the place to go. And if you want to find us on social media, you can actually find us at Theme Park Duo on all platforms, and that's Periscope, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and you've been taking over the Instagram stories, so things have been pretty active on there.
Yeah, go check out the Instagram stories. We are at a haunt every weekend and sometimes on Thursdays. So just go check it out. There's always stuff to see, and I try to catch the fun stuff. So.
Yes, exactly.
Like last night, I got Elvira's nipple tassels spinning in a boomerang. So yeah, I always try to get the fun stuff in there.
That's tantalizing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so make sure to check all that stuff out. Also, if you want to shoot us an email, you can reach us at
themeparkduo@gmail.com.
Exactly. And then also on iTunes, if you guys want to, you can leave us a 5-star written review, and we'd always appreciate that because it helps us bring us up in the standings. It helps people find us easier and enjoy us like you are right now. But Nikki, how can people find you?
You can follow me on Twitter at NikkiM_313.
And you can follow me at Laker793 on Twitter. But most importantly, above all, everybody, always remember, there's always a great, big, beautiful tomorrow. See ya!